Empathy is something that you'll feel as you pass somebody in the street who is having a hard time. You may feel their pain. You may start crying. You may look and feel some disgust, but you keep going, keep walking. That's empathy. But when it comes to compassion, I feel that there's a movement forward. There's a compulsion to help. There's a compulsion to make a difference. And that begins with oneself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Finding Equilibrium Show. Delighted you're here, delighted to be here, and delighted to have my guest today. My guest today is James Breeze, and James is a mindful entrepreneur, which is such an interesting title, and the founder and the CEO of Objective Experience. And I know James has spent a lot of time in Bali and in Asia, and is now in Sydney, where I am. And welcome, James. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. Doing well in lockdown here in Sydney.
Yeah, so tell us your story for people who don't know you. It feels like you've done so many different things because you're a psychologist as well. So many different hats and things that you've done. But how did you get to become the CEO and founder of a business and spend such a large proportion of your time in other countries? What's your backstory?
So I guess when I was 17, I had a group of friends who had been overseas on a student exchange with a company called AFS, the American Field Service. And I decided it would be a great idea to go and get out of Adelaide, where I grew up, and experience the world, not having been overseas before. So I packed my bag and went and lived with a Thai family in southern Thailand, in Surat Thani, near Koh Samui, where all the tourists go. For a year, and I went to school there and learned about the culture. I still speak the language fluently, and fell in love with the collective culture that is, most of Southeast Asia. During that time, I spent a month in a monastery as a novice monk, and there learned how to meditate. That has become part of my everyday ritual, or it is part of my everyday ritual ever since. And where that led me was to study psychology. During my honours, I wrote a thesis about meditation. I looked at its effect on stress, anxiety, and self-actualization. Actually proved my hypotheses all correct, and had a really, really great outcome in that. And that was a long time ago, probably 1995. And of course, it was very new. If you look at the meditation literature these days, it abounds with findings like I had, but it was a bit unique back then. And then I sort of progressed into my honours and looking at getting into clinical psychology, and then all of a sudden ended up in Sydney at Macquarie University doing organisational psychology, because at the time I was offered a place at Macquarie University, and I spoke to my lecturers and supervisor in Adelaide during my honours, and realised that perhaps health wasn't really where I wanted to be. Although I was passionate about helping people, it wasn't really the hospitals, and clinical psychology wasn't really for me. And I ended up in organisational psychology. Did a bit of a stint in Anderson Contracting, or Accenture, as it used to be called, and it was currently called. And did some employee motivation, organisational culture kind of work for a while. Found that at the time, in the early 2000s, it was a bit stagnating in terms of applications and technology. Technology seemed to be the thing that was making everybody unhappy at work, but it wasn't actually being addressed. So I ended up in usability testing in 2000, ended up running that first business that I was working for after a couple of years as a general manager. And that set me on my path in business into user experience or customer experience, using my understanding of human behaviour and research to help large companies like Commonwealth Bank, Telstra, companies in Singapore, DBS Bank, Citibank, PayPal, Google, Facebook, understand how people use things, and try to design them to be as easy to use as possible. Obviously, having lived in Thailand back in the day, I really did love living in Southeast Asia. So set up the business in Singapore in 2013, got a bit sick of how expensive, hot and boring Singapore can be if you live there, and ended up living in Bali, close to the surf, which I love. And, with a beautiful Hindu culture and very compassionate place to be, and great energy. So I lived there until got forced back to Australia with COVID, and here I am.
You are, wow, but a lot there. Thank you for sharing so many things. One thing I just wanted to pick up on, so you spent a month as a training monk, you mentioned, and was that because you intended to become a monk, and you just did the training for a month and decided it wasn't for you, or was it more of an experience that you wanted to just see what it was like? What was the motivation behind that training?
I was a novice monk is a legitimate monk. I just wasn't old enough to wear orange. So,
Okay.
I did actually wear orange, but I wasn't old enough to follow all the 200 odd precepts that full-fledged monks do. So I only had the 10 that novice monks follow. And I did it because I saw all these monks wandering around I'd been living in Bali for like eight or 9 months by that time. And I saw all these monks doing things, and I just was very curious as to how do they spend their life? What did they do? And what it was like to understand meditation and that sort of thing. And so I kind of fell into it that way, and then realized that my passion really was for understanding the nature of consciousness.
Interesting. So what as a novice monk, how do they spend their time? Is it meditation all day? Like what is the routine or the rituals of a monk?
Yeah, it's interesting. And this was pretty unique for a 17-year-old, Aussie kid. Basically, I was given a hut in the forest to live in with a mat on the ground and a wooden pillow. And my sheets, it was obviously very humid, but my sheets were the robes that I was wearing. That's to teach you that you don't need all of this other fluff and rubbish that we keep as humans, and just to look at this simplifying life as much as possible. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, the lights came on, and I woke up and had a bath outside with my robes on. They get wet and you wash just to be private. And then that's followed by a meditation with all the other monks who are at the monastery. And following that, we swept the yard to keep the place tidy, picked up rubbish, but the sweeping is also a meditation. Following that, we did our arms round at about 6:30, probably walked 10 kilometers every morning barefoot on dirt roads to get our offerings. We weren't allowed to, make a fuss and tell people who were giving us food that we were there. They had to sense us, and then they expected that we were coming, and they would give us food and put it into our round bronze ong, the bowl that you have, and any food that went into your bowl, that was what you ate out of the same bowl at the same time.
Wow.
So the lesson there was, to not have food for pleasure, but have food for sustenance. Obviously, it depends on who woke up and who was available on the round to give food. So, and there were a fair few monks where I was living. So the monastery did prepare additional rice and food for us to put in the same bowl and eat. So we ate together, and then spend the rest of the day either practicing meditation on our own or with a teacher who I was assigned that I could see at any time. He said, "I'm here from 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock. Come and see me." In Buddhism, we do not force our practice onto anybody. It's up to you to come and see me. So of course I went and saw him every single day, and discussed any issues that I had and plans for the future. I decided to study psychology at that time, and then at the end, I think did I get my meditation in the morning? I did say the meditation. And at the end of the day, there was also another meditation at sunset with chanting. We had incense burning around us. It wasn't for the smell, it was for the smoke, to keep the mosquitoes away.
Right.
And we fasted from after breakfast, essentially. At lunchtime, there was a bit of a snack that you could have, and in the evening we could have some sweet tea. But there was a fast for most of the day until the next morning. Obviously, we were in the forest. There was no lights, so when it got dark, it was time for bed. And it was just a cycle of that I did.
Wow, it's a very interesting experience. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. So from that to where you are now, like if we bring up to the present day, so now you've got a business. How many people do you have working in the business now?
At the moment, we've got about 10 in Singapore and 10 in Sydney.
Okay, so you've got 20
Mm.
people, and
Mm.
dealing with the change that we've collectively gone through in terms of uncertainty and disruption. And in terms of your business, has it been negatively impacted with the pandemic and the shifts that we've seen over the last couple of years?
Initially, back in 2020, in March, April was negative because everybody stopped spending money. We tend to work with the large corporates, and those people are working online, and online, I would say, has increased in its importance and usage during the pandemic. So back in March, we had to, more than a year ago, we had to pivot and begin doing all of our behavioural research online instead. And we've been doing that since then, and it's only getting busier, because what clients are realizing is, we're doing experiments essentially, and it's a contrived situation, even if we're in the lab, and we just put it into the online remote context, and it's still contrived, but there's benefits that can be gained in terms of understanding the consumer or the staff of our clients. And clients realize that, this works. It's actually faster, it's cheaper, it's easier to get to, and they can all log in and watch online, do a few more Zoom calls. But I think it's now the preferred way of doing things, because in reality, we could set up a lab, we might be doing some work for a big bank. We could set up a lab and have people come in and use the technology and understand their issues and how to fix it. But actually, that's not as real as letting them do it at home or at work or in the environment, in their car, or wherever they're
of course, it's going to be more accurate. How interesting.
Yeah. Actually, we are doing incredibly well, because we now don't have an office. We don't have office administrators. The cost to our consulting business are our staff salaries, and we have enough projects to keep everybody busy, so the profitability is increased.
Cool. So from a, one of the downsides, so there's an upside and a downside, but one of the upsides of what's happened over the last couple of years is that we've all become digitally more comfortable, if you like. I spend my life on Zoom or Teams or one of those other tools. But I do notice that sometimes I can feel fatigued. There is a difference between, in terms of concentrating, in terms of this conversation versus being together in the room. How would, from a well-being point of view, how would you or how do you personally, or how would you advise people to be able to sort of manage their digital experience, and how they actually use devices so that they don't feel emotionally exhausted?
It's a challenge, and I used to do a lot of social media. I don't look at it anymore. I do a lot of photography, landscape photography, and I would get out of sharing things on Facebook and Instagram and getting those likes. I just stopped doing that. Unfortunately, I'm not taking as many photos, but now those photos are more personal. So just giving up social media for me was a great opportunity, and also it's great during COVID because I don't see all the rubbish that people post, which can stress us out. In terms of meetings, I think in our business, the meetings are much shorter, to the point, with an agenda, and scheduled for half an hour, not for an hour. So we try to keep them at a minimum. But I also find it's interesting. I have staff from different cultures. In Singapore, we have people from Indonesia, from France, we had someone from Spain until recently, Philippines, Thailand recently, Singapore. So we've got all these different people, and it can be sometimes hard to connect with different cultures as a manager. But I'm actually finding that with online communication, I'm getting to know people really well.
Really interesting.
Can meet quickly and get down to the details. I just had a performance review with one of my staff, and it was fantastic. And she's from Indonesia. So I do find that if you use it the right way, and there's a good point to things, and we're not just doing meetings for meeting's sake, and I tell my staff I don't want to be on a meeting if I'm not going to add some value. It's a waste of everything.
So just building on that point, so you mentioned half an hour, have an agenda. What are your other tips to be able to build rapport, I guess, and relationships online, because a lot of people listen to this will have a similar challenge in terms of being able to either be part of a team or manage a team when we can't physically come together. But your experience with 2 offices, you must have had a lot of experience of being able to work and run remote teams. So I'd love you to share any insights, any tips to help people effectively build a strong culture whilst not being able to come together.
Yeah, so there's a few questions there. I've been working remotely since moving to Singapore, and working with my Sydney team, and then from Singapore I moved to Bali and worked with both teams remotely. So remote work is normal for me. In terms of managing staff and engaging with staff, keeping up the cadence of interactions and putting out your needs regularly is absolutely important. What we do at work is a daily huddle to for everybody to talk about what they're doing, what issues they have, how they're feeling, anything they need help with, any time that they have free so they can work on other things. And it's just and we actually don't do that face to face or on Zoom. We do that in Slack. So we have a channel in Slack, and every morning at 9 o'clock, everybody updates on what's happening. So, and I read everything and make sure I respond.
Okay, so they update they write the update. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and I'm always making sure and reminding people to tell us how they're feeling in that as well. So I find that's a great way to keep tabs on things. And, I think I know more about what they're doing than I used to know, even when we were in an office together. when I was, because back in the early days when I started the business, I was in the office regularly. But I think I know more about what people are doing now, because people are in that habit of keeping us up to date. So that's critical. And then in terms of managing the business or the culture, actually, it was a suggestion from one of my staff here in Sydney. We've started a wellness program, and once a week on a Thursday, we used to have a drink. So we'd have, beers at 4:30 on a Thursday. She suggested, why don't we do that differently and talk about health and wellness and well-being, which we've started doing and been doing that successfully now and we've had guest speakers in during that time. We've just played games, like Pictionary online. I've done a meditation with everybody. And in fact, some people in our team had never done meditation before and absolutely loved it. Others had done it before and liked a different perspective, a different flavor. I chose to do a compassion meditation at that time and just sort of, give people a different perspective on what meditation can bring. And then out of all of that, we saw a fantastic video done by Atlassian, the big IT company here in Sydney and globally. And it was about a wellness week. So we're in the process of getting organised for our wellness week, which starts on next Friday. Happens to synchronise with Are You OK Day on the 9th of September. And during that time, we've got 5 different guest speakers coming in, doing yoga. We've got hypnotherapy. We've got the ladies who run Singularity University here in Australia doing a presentation looking at wearable technology for health and the future of technology and how that can impact everybody at work. And other guests coming in to talk about mental health and coping with COVID and that sort of thing, along with other activities and content that we'll be sharing. So it's been absolutely amazing.
So cool, yeah.
Absolutely amazing for me as an owner to see these many of my staff come out of their shell and offer different ways of doing things and different insights and getting involved.
That's really interesting, because you realize that wellness is the element, or health and wellness connects together, because whatever job you're doing or department you're in, everyone's interested in their health at some level. And by embracing that, did you get any pushback around, because when you mentioned beers and then suddenly no beers, and it's we're meditating, not everybody might embrace that in the same way, but ultimately your experience has been positive?
Yeah, nobody at all complained about that. Yeah.
That's really cool. I wanted to pick up on your title, mindful entrepreneur. you call yourself a mindful entrepreneur. What does that mean exactly? Like, how would you define an entrepreneur who is also mindful?
I think I've met and I'm friends with and been around entrepreneurs who are there to make cash and to grow their business for growth's sake. Um, I value my time, and I value the things that I do and the lifestyle that I have, and I'm not here to make money at any cost. Being able to get up and meditate in the morning and then journal and do my ritual, have my coffee, and then get into work is very important to me. If I had to get up and start working at 5:30, I saw an article recently talking about the 5:30 club, and people getting up to do work at 5:30. I'm thinking, well, that's the best time to meditate, right? And the gap between light and night and day. But having the ability to make those choices around how I spend my time is very important to me. And I'm not here to grow things at the cost to my health or to my staff's health. The other thing which is tricky when I'm working for companies who are there to make money or to save money in call centers and customer support and that sort of thing, we're talking with telecommunications companies who are trying to sell more phones or sell more plans and service customers better. I try to think about how can we use the influence that we have over the customers in those companies to actually make the world a better place. Because having lived in Asia for a long time and traveled to places like Antarctica and seen the contrast of impacts that people are having on this world, it really makes me upset when companies don't consider those sort of things. And how can we bring the compassion that many people in the world have lost these days into the work that we do, so that we make a difference? So I'll turn companies down that are not aligned with our values as a business to improve people's lives. And seek out companies that are doing the right thing. One of our large customers in the last few years is a company that originates carbon credits. So we've done research for them, understanding how consumers could potentially invest in carbon credits and make a difference using that financial tool, which has fantastic outcomes for the environment, particularly here in Australia, or whether it's working with health, and improving the way people can access health or get prescriptions or see a doctor. And those kind of things are much more fulfilling to me. And of course, the staff absolutely love it because they're doing.
Yeah, it's much more meaningful, because that can be a challenge, can't it? Because I very much align with your philosophy, but sometimes when you're in business, there are clients that don't align with that. And I guess what you're saying is pick your clients, but even the ones where they may not align, it is an opportunity to help them change in a positive direction. Because there are quite a few who might not align, and this point around money at any cost, I think, is a very good one. At Singularity U, I worked with, you mentioned them before, and they talk a lot about consequences, first degree, second degree, third degree consequences, and that really makes you think that there's always a bigger impact of a decision that you make.
Yes. Yeah.
See, you talk a lot about meditation, and a lot of people listening to this are going through a lot of change, a lot of disruption, and we talk a lot about balance and finding equilibrium. What do you personally do to find equilibrium? So, as an entrepreneur, you've clearly had a lot of good training, a lot of good foundations with your life and experience in Asia. But right now, how do you maintain? And you've touched on some of the things that you do, but I'd love you to share the tools that you have as a busy person to help you maintain your balance, so that you can function and make good decisions.
Yeah, so I have a routine in the mornings. Like I said, I wake up when I wake up. I don't set an alarm early. I do have one just in case I sleep in and can't get my son out of bed for school on time. I very rarely get to that one. So I'll wake up and have a drink of water, and then I enjoy meditating outside in nature to connect with the earth. So I walk up the hill here in Avalon and actually climb down the cliff and sit on the rocks by the ocean. The last few days, the surf's been huge, so it's actually some of the waves got a little bit close to me. But I have a practice of meditation that I do. I mean, I've done lots and lots of different sorts of meditation over the years, and now what I do is a kriya from Indian Hindu tradition, which involves kind of like fire breathing and some chanting and then meditation. But when I start that meditation, I think about initially what the reason is. What were the reasons that I got into this in the first place? And I remember my time as a monk, and I have already set, when I sit down, I've already set an intention for that particular meditation for the day, the night before. I sit with that meditation and a feeling of compassion in my heart as I do that exercise. And I don't time it. I just do it as long as it takes. And sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 10 minutes. And I also try to do it in the rain or in the sun.
Really? Wow. So serious. Yeah. So an all weathers meditator. That's amazing.
I just love it there. It's just amazing. So, and then I walk. It takes me 10 minutes to get up there and about 10 minutes to walk to the coffee shop.
Okay.
I get my soy latte and then come home and I like mind mapping. So I'll journal. What am I grateful for? How did I feel this morning? How was my meditation? What sort of things came up? What was my intention? What are the top 3 things, compassionate things that I'm going to do today? And, what other insights have I had? So I'll do that mind map every morning and then, get my son off to school and begin the day. At the end of the day, I will, it's not a hard and fast, but I'll try and journal again on a different mind map along similar lines about what I've learned during the day, the great things that I've done to help people, any challenges that I've had, how my body's feeling, and that sort of thing. If I need to, if I have time, I may meditate again. Sometimes I'll use the Intuition app, which is a highly technical experience that can completely clear your mind, and I really enjoy that. Or I might just do the regular anapanasati, the Buddhist type of breathing meditation, which I learned when I was living in southern Thailand. Again, always with intention. So that's kind of what I do to keep sane. The other thing which I always do is try to do some form of exercise every day. I see a personal trainer on the steps of the Avalon Surf Club because we can't go to the gym, but I see Lara every 3 times a week. I'm going for a surf this afternoon, and if there's no waves, I'll try to have a walk with my wife or a jog, or even a mountain bike with my son. So.
Nice. Wow. It sounds like you've got lots of great things in your day. You mentioned compassion a number of times, and for both in the context of individuals and organizations, but for people who are listening to this, who resonate with that word, but don't know exactly how to transition, how to become more compassionate, what would you say? How can somebody become more compassionate? So I guess where I'm coming from is to create compassionate organizations or communities. It starts with the individual learning how to become more compassionate. How would you advise someone to bring more compassion into their hearts?
I think that first of all, it starts by understanding what compassion is and the difference between, say, empathy and compassion. Empathy is something that you'll feel as you pass somebody in the street who is having a hard time. You may feel their pain. You may start crying. You may look and feel some disgust, but you keep going, keep walking. That's empathy. With somebody, you can show them empathy by, reflecting how they're feeling, or telling them, how you also have experienced those sort of things, and do nothing else. But when it comes to compassion, I feel that there's a movement forward. There's a compulsion to help. There's a compulsion to make a difference, and that begins with oneself. Being compassionate towards myself. I am choosing to be vegan. I am choosing to do the exercise. I'm doing it, and I am doing the meditation. That's compassion towards myself. And it's not just thinking about it, right? And then looking at how that applies to other people is, well, what and how can I actually help somebody, which is why every morning when I do my my mind map, I write down what are the 3 things that I'm going to do today, which are compassionate. How am I actually going to help somebody? Obviously, I'll do other things as they come up, but I make a point of really considering that every day, and choosing to make that difference. And some of this thinking I've got from watching some videos, which everybody can YouTube on the Dalai Lama's perspective on compassion. And what he always says is that in society these days, we chose to educate people on the intellect and the competition, and doing better and doing more and achieving more and being fast and learning, and it's all here, it's all intellectual. But in most societies, there's a lack of education on compassion and what compassion is and how to be more compassionate. And the simplest and quickest and easiest way to be more compassionate is to meditate and to do loving kindness or metta meditation on compassion, and to feel that compulsion to help in your heart as you do these exercises. And if you Google loving kindness meditation or compassion meditation, there's many videos of people who teach you how to do that by becoming focused, present, concentrating, and then thinking about yourself and how you feel, and and wishing yourself all the best, and then doing that for other people in your life, your family, your friends, but also doing it for people who maybe are creating trouble for you or have created trouble for you in the past, and really feeling that you can help those people and potentially take on some of the problems that they have yourself, and learning to sit with that. So training ourselves on compassion is something that we need to do now, and we should do it all the time for kids at school as they come through.
Then they learn those skills as they grow up. Yeah. It's so interesting. So when people are feeling, because almost in some ways it's the opposite. So because we have been trained with the intellect and we've been trained to accumulate and feel that there's finite resources in many ways, that has encouraged or created a culture where compassion hasn't been foremost in people's minds. I always think that in these times of change, what you see is the best of humanity and the worst of humanity. So we are seeing a lot of compassion, and we're also seeing a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. For people who are living in fear and are feeling really anxious most of the time, how could they start on their journey to embracing compassion to help them feel better, but also help them help other people? Because that has that ripple effect, doesn't it?
Interesting. I think I come from a family that has a history of anxiety, and I have had issues with it in the past, not anymore. But I think that learning to be present is the first step. And we can be present when we're watching a movie and get involved in the movie and only be focusing on the movie, but when we do that, there's no intention, so it's just watching a movie. But if we do exercise with an intention to be present in that exercise, we'll probably do that exercise better. But it will also, if we think about what are the health outcomes that we're going to get from that, we will see changes in that. So yeah, becoming more present is important. And then once we can be present, and it doesn't take very long to learn that, because we all know how to do it. We're all human. We're all built the same way. We come out into this world with the ability to be present, and also with the ability to be compassionate, because we would die if we didn't have compassion in our lives as kids, right?
So true, yeah.
Yeah. So I think then, practicing a compassion meditation whenever possible, without any expectation, but just going through the process is a very easy way to start with this. And I think that I've seen some changes in myself when I've started writing down the compassionate acts that I have done and that I want to do, because it just makes me mindful of of
Yes.
what I'm doing,
Yeah.
instead of just going through the day and going through all the old habits and all the rubbish and all the stresses and anxieties and stuff. I'm actually quite meticulously trying to record and understand and experience what I'm doing, as opposed to going through life.
Yes, of course. And sometimes you don't actually notice that we're all doing a lot of compassionate things, but if you're not capturing them, you don't realize. Yeah.
We're really conscious of it, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a waste.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I'm a daily journaler, and and that for me really helps me get that perspective, and writing down those moments where those moments where you see it completely differently based on
Yeah.
based on your
Once you do it long enough, you see it when it happens, and that's really
Yes.
nice.
Yeah, it's wonderful. How long have you been doing those like you've been meditating? Has it been consistent since you were 17, or have you
No. I went through all kinds of different stages in university and traveling and this sort of thing, but back in the day it was always when I had a problem, a stressful job, stressful university time or whatever. It was always the meditation was a thing that I did to calm down.
Okay.
But then living in Asia, living in Bali, there's a lot of very spiritual people there, and maybe 5 or 6 years ago, or even longer, that was brought back to me. I did some very life-changing breathwork experiences with one of my friends, and that kind of really brought home to me the effectiveness of what these practices can do for our health and our well-being and our spirituality. So that's when I started to do it much more regularly. And actually the journaling only started, I've always written things down, but it's never been conscious, I'd say. But the journaling really started with fervor when I got locked down in March 2020 for the first time. I'm kind of like, oh gosh, and at that time, the business wasn't doing well. And I thought, right, I need to really start being present and writing down and putting in some plans and manifesting some of this stuff to improve.
So from adversity comes good things in terms of what you've been able to build on top of that. I'm conscious of time, so in terms of where people can find out more about the work that you do. So we haven't talked at all about the core work, which is user experience and customer experience, which is, and it feels that almost joins together all of your experience. Is very interesting as a novice monk, as a psychologist, as a researcher. You're suddenly bringing all those pieces together to really help people understand their customers better and help to create products and services. What types of clients do you work with? You mentioned banks and organizations in the health space. Are there specific types of clients that you enjoy focusing on and working with?
Yeah, we generally work with the larger companies because the staff that we have are highly educated and quite expensive. So an example of a project that we've done recently is working with the Department of Health. During COVID, they produced a lot of online products that help pharmacists and doctors in their work. And so we've done research on those things to try to understand how to make them a little bit easier to use and provide access to more and more people for health services from home. Pretty much anything that people touch, we work on, because we're such a unique business within the whole sphere of digital. We've done research with some of the large social media companies on improving the video player, for example, or understanding how people search for information on climate change, what sort of words that they use, and how can these
how interesting.
How can the algorithms improve. We've done work with digital devices in the home for some of the large manufacturers of white goods, diary studies to understand how people do their washing or use their oven, and how to make that a little bit easier. I just want a button to press on my washing machine, by the way. So yeah, that sort of thing, to anything like mobile applications for big banks here in Australia and Singapore. How do we make those easier? I often justify the psychology part of all of that. Obviously it's behavioral research, but you know, when we use these things, if they don't quite work properly, they create a little stress in our lives, and that minor stressor and all the other ones adds up to a problem. And if your threshold of stress is already low and you start getting frustrated,
yeah, so true.
you know,
Yeah,
the way that these companies, you know, that's up, right? So if we can pull little bits and pieces out of, you know,
yes,
your day and make them a little bit easier, I think that brings me satisfaction. And so for a long time, that was the justification for why I was doing what I was doing. But now I think I've managed to match my purpose in life with the purpose of the business to actually improve people's lives and try to find companies who really want to do the right thing or are already doing the right thing, but want to do it better. And we can help more people that way. You know?
oh, that's wonderful. Really wonderful work. Where can people find out more about you and the business?
So objectiveexperience.com is our website, and I'm quite active on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I do use. It's yeah, so James Breeze on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's where we can find me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, James, for your time, and let me acknowledge you for you know all the amazing work that you've done, and for making the time today to share your story and some of those tools. You've certainly inspired me to up my meditate. I meditate, but I like the idea of meditating outside. That it will make it more of a it will elevate the experience for me. So I'll certainly make some changes there. But thank you so much, James. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you everyone for your time and your attention. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.